Wildlife officers found a strange metal object in an otter lodge. What was inside made them call the police straight away. While inspecting the Wye estuary in Wales, Officer Sarah Denton spotted a rusty shape poking out from a large otter lodge. Curious, she carefully pulled it free and realized it was an old camcorder, badly corroded but still intact. Thinking it was just rubbish, she brought it back to the station. Inside, she found a mini DV tape surprisingly untouched by water. Using an old player, she loaded the tape. Seconds into the footage, her face went pale. She didn't say a word, just picked up the phone and called the police. Sarah Denton stared at the screen in stunned silence. The flickering footage, though grainy and warped from years of exposure, showed something no one expected. The mini DV tape had recorded what appeared to be a nature trip, someone filming wildlife around the Wye estuary. It began innocently, birds in flight, otters playing in the reeds, a pair of deer cautiously crossing the shallow edge of the riverbank. The date in the corner of the screen read 14/7/2016, almost a decade ago. Then the camera panned suddenly, unsteadily, as if the person holding it had been startled. The lens zoomed in on what looked like a figure, a man, possibly in his 30s, standing in waist-deep water with a tripod. His jacket was soaked, and he was adjusting the lens of a large professional camera pointed at something in the woods. The person filming clearly didn't want to be seen. The angle was low, almost hidden behind foliage. Sarah squinted. The audio crackled, but you could faintly hear the calls of birds and the rush of the river. The next clip jumped abruptly. Now it was dusk. The figure was gone, but something else had replaced him in the frame. A set of muddy footprints leading out of the water and vanishing into thick bramble. A torchlight flickered briefly in the distance before the footage cut out. Sarah felt a knot tighten in her chest. She rewound and watched again. The camera hadn't been filming someone casually. Whoever was behind that lens had been watching this man for some time. The following segment began in near total darkness, except for the dim glow of a campfire. The person filming had moved closer. You could now see the same man again, this time without his tripod. He was crouched near the flames, holding something tightly in his lap, wrapped in fabric. The angle shifted slightly. Whoever held the camcorder had moved in, hidden behind trees. You could hear their breath, uneven, nervous. Then came the whisper, not from the man by the fire, from behind the camera. A low murmur barely audible over the crackle of burning wood. Sarah replayed it several times, turning up the volume each time. He has it. I think he has it. The next 5 minutes were a shaky blur. The camcorder had been dropped on the ground, still recording. Shadows moved quickly. There was shouting, muffled by distance and wind. A sudden splash. Heavy footsteps. A thud. Silence. Then the camera cut off again. Sarah sat back, staring at the final frame before the blackout. A half-submerged log with a long, dark stain running across it. She picked up the phone and called her superior. "You need to come here now," she said. Within the hour, a full team of local police officers arrived at the outpost. They viewed the footage silently, their faces hardening as the scenes unfolded. One officer, DS Paul Knowles, looked visibly shaken by the time the tape ended. "We had a case back in 2016, he said quietly. Photographer named Julian Pike. He was doing a documentary on riverside wildlife. Went missing near this exact stretch of the estuary. Only thing we found was his tent and a ripped camera bag. We searched for weeks." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "You think that's him in the footage?" Knowles nodded slowly. "Yeah, that looks like him. But if that's the case, then someone was watching him, filming him without his knowledge. And the way that tape ends, that's no accident." The footage was handed over to forensics. The video file was extracted, enhanced, and analyzed frame by frame. The man in the video was confirmed to be Julian Pike. The police traced the model of the camcorder, a rare Sony handheld only sold for a few years. Its serial number, though partially faded, matched one reported missing in a theft case in 2014, 2 years before Pike vanished. Search teams were dispatched immediately to the section of the estuary where the camera had been recovered. For days, divers combed the murky waters and reed-choked banks. Eventually, they discovered a collapsed section of mud bank. Inside it, buried beneath layers of silt, was a human femur. Dental records later confirmed the remains belonged to Julian Pike. But that wasn't the end. Once the footage was made public, it caught the attention of another police department 70 miles away. Officers in Hereford reached out with something chilling. They had a nearly identical missing person case from the same summer. A solo backpacker named Lucy Warden, last seen hiking through marshland trails with a camera crew. Her team had left a day before she vanished, and she'd planned to stay behind to photograph the sunrise. She never checked out of her B&B. No bags were taken, no phone. Her camera gear was never found. And now, thanks to the footage recovered from the Otter Lodge, a new thread had appeared, one that connected two disappearances. Forensics found something else on the tape. Hidden data files, not viewable through normal playback, were embedded in the mini-DV's metadata. A technician spotted the anomaly during extraction. Inside the file was a set of encrypted GPS coordinates. Sarah watched as the lead detective Knowles stared at the coordinates on screen, cross-referencing them with maps. "This is inland," he said, "miles from the estuary, on farmland." They followed the trail. The land belonged to a man named Derek Hensley, a 56-year-old local who'd been living off-grid for years. Officially, he owned nothing but a small mobile home and an allotment, but aerial scans revealed a large outbuilding hidden under tree cover. Police arrived with a warrant. Inside the outbuilding, they discovered shelves of antique tech, camcorders, VHS tapes, mini-DVs, SD cards, all labeled with dates, some going back 20 years. In one corner of the shed sat a dusty laptop. On it were dozens of video files. Some were corrupted, others weren't. One by one, they opened them. They showed different people, all outdoors, all seemingly unaware they were being watched. Men, women, all filmed from a distance, some looking straight at the lens, others unaware. The backgrounds changed. Rivers, forests, campsites. One video showed Lucy Warden sitting on a log, drinking coffee. Then came the last clip, Julian Pike, the same campfire scene, but from a different angle, from closer. The voice behind the camera whispered the same line again, this time clearly, "He has it. It's mine." The police questioned Derek Hensley. At first he claimed he'd found the tapes at a market, but after hours of silence and mounting pressure, his story crumbled. He had been filming people for years, collecting footage like trophies, but when asked about Pike and Warden, he clammed up. No confession, no clear answers. He was charged with multiple counts of stalking and unlawful surveillance, but without direct evidence linking him to their deaths, no murder charges could stick. Still, the case rocked the country. Sarah Denton stood by the river weeks later, staring at the spot where she'd pulled the camcorder from the Otter Lodge. She couldn't stop thinking about how close the truth had been to staying hidden, how nature itself, the very animals Julian loved, had unknowingly preserved the only proof that would bring his case back to light. The otters had stuffed that camcorder deep into their lodge, sealing it away in twigs and reeds, and if it hadn't been for a glint of rust catching the evening sun, it might have stayed buried forever. Sarah transferred stations shortly after, unable to look at the estuary the same way again. But before leaving, she left a small memorial at the water's edge, a simple wooden plaque that read, "In memory of those who were watched when no one was watching." The camcorder and tapes remain in police custody to this day.